There we go. All right. So it's going to capture everything we say, including this is my colleague Enos. She's one of our creative directors, and I thought it would be good to have her just hear what you have to say live and in real time as we start to move into this next phase of developing out the MHC story. But without me talking too much, because I could go on forever. I can always you can pull my string anytime, and I'll start going. But
Yeah.
I'd love to just give you the floor and uh, present however you present to
Right.
somebody at DoD, VA, whoever you pick. You tell me who you're
Conference.
presenting to.
Right. If we had the military health continuum up, it's normally what would happen is I'd have that maybe as a backdrop. Um, but the genesis of it, and our goal with the military health continuum was to show somebody just joined.
Yep. Who is that just joined? I see a phone, but I don't see a name.
They're probably not connected to the audio yet.
Yeah.
It's a 508. Who's 508?
Can't tell anymore.
No.
Can you hear me?
No.
Yeah, there's
Yes,
somebody.
Tim, is that you?
Yeah, it's me. Sorry. I was having trouble getting in via Zoom. Zoom is not friendly on our system.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, now we know who you are. I'll keep talking.
Sorry.
So yeah, our intent when we developed the military health continuum was to show the entire system as one conjoined system for military medicine and the beneficiaries that the taxpayer supports under that veteran and military banner, if you will. And we started thinking about this after I had a discussion with General Talita Crossland, who had just taken over the Defense Health Agency. And I was standing beside her at a buffet at one of our conferences, and I asked her, I said, man, what's your vision for this? And I'd already heard her keynote, so I kind of knew where she was going to go. And she said, we're one big system, and the taxpayer funds this entire thing. And I want to look at it as an entire system that's continuous from the time that somebody enlists all the way through their length of service. And she didn't define what the end was. She just said all the way through their length of service. So I took that home with me, and I thought about what does Philips do, and where are we, and what are our modalities, where do we touch, and what's our mission and future vision for how we want to work within that military health continuum. And it came to realization that we touch military folks and their families almost everywhere and every experience that they have in terms of clinical or medical interaction along their entire experience as a military member or beneficiary. And our CEO says it well. He says, if you, that's Jeff DeLulo, if you walk into a VA facility, there is a extreme likelihood that you're going to be touched by something from our company. That's extremely likely. And there's a similar experience with Department of Defense, maybe not as dense, but it's similar. And certainly when we get into operational medicine, we have a little bit more of a touch point than perhaps others. So back to the continuum, realize we touch so many people along the way. How can we show that in addition to the life cycle of a military member? So I started scratching things out on a piece of paper, and then really back of the napkin kind of thought process, and shared that with Matt Templeton. He said, I think we can visualize this. And so we started kicking things back and forth about what that might look like. And over time, it became more and more complex because we realized how many different layers there are to this continuum. So we started with the thought that, all right, what is the military experience? And it really starts from the day you're recruited. And if you live a life in the military, the day you end up as an honored veteran on getting, laid to rest on behalf of a grateful nation. That's it. It goes from that long. And then along that continuum, certain things happen. You get a family, you have kids, you get deployed. You may or may not get injured while you're deployed. You may get injured in training on active duty. And that active duty experience can be either very long, 30+ years, or very short. There's some people who are veterans that are being treated by Veterans Affairs who got hurt in boot camp. Because they got hurt in boot camp in the 4th week of their experience, they're eligible for veteran care. So it's highly variable. Those individuals never been deployed, never even been trained other than a few weeks of boot camp, but they're still veterans and they're still eligible in the system. And they're part of that 9 million beneficiary population that we're obliged to take care of. So when we build a continuum out, we start thinking about what is that individual experience? Okay, so they go to boot camp, they go to training, they go to their platform, whatever that is, whatever service it is. It's a ship, it's an aircraft, it's a squadron, it's a deployable unit, it's a marine barracks. Who knows? Can be anything. And then a subset of that will get deployed, and they'll get deployed into a forward situation, which may or may not be inherently dangerous. You know, it's a lot of people presume that if you're in the military, you are automatically subjected to life-threatening things. There are many people, probably 80–90% of the military, that don't get put in that situation. They're personnelmen, they're contracting officers, there's so many other things to keep our military going that not that many actually get thrown into the breach of under fire. But that happens. And when you get into that situation, that becomes, now you're in operational medicine, you're forward deployed, you're on a ship, you're supporting aircraft, you're away from the core of military medicine. So you're in some subset of that. So we made sure that when we developed the continuum, we picked that up. So it's a subset of the continuum where we go through each step that an individual may experience while they're on deployment. Many go on deployment, come back home 100% healthy. Some go on deployment, get injured in training. Some have an unfortunate demise in battle, don't make it home alive. Others get injured, get treated, return back to duty, get deployed again. It's a circle that can happen. And then you go through, if you're injured, you go through rehab. You either get sent back to the mainstream military, or you get discharged and you go into the military and into the veteran health system. So we pick that up. There's a transition, there's a handoff that occurs between active military and the veteran system. And again, that can happen anywhere along the continuum. Could be 3 weeks, 4 weeks, could be 30+ years. It's highly variable. And the veteran experience is highly variable. Combat injured, not combat injured, injured in training, and in some cases, injured but not considered service connected. And that becomes a whole nother problem that we actually don't address very much, because they sort of fall out of the system if that happens. And then we take that continuum, and again, I go back to, where does Phillips touch the individual across that? So we had all these waypoints along that continuum, and we started looking at, okay, where's Phillips in hospitals? Where are we in medical transport devices? Where are we in the field? What modalities do we put in different locations? And where does that fit within DOD and Veterans Affairs? And we put markers in each of those steps for each modality. So what we can do is we take that continuum, and mechanically I can push a button and little dots light up along that continuum everywhere Phillips is. And each modality has a different color. So there's some that show up and there's like 5 or 6 dots in like a fixed medical facility. We have a lot of modalities in there. When you go to operational medicine, maybe there's 2 or 3 dots at each location, because we're only doing monitoring and emergency care. But it's very vivid when you light that up and you show it to Phillips internally. And they say, oh, wow, we're everywhere in this health system. And it's a real eye opener. And then we take that picture and say, all of these different modalities interact with each other at each waypoint. And that's where we become that data management company. And we're moving data between each one of these modalities. And then we lay on top of that the electronic health record. So all of this data has to go somewhere. And the military health system is mandated to go to a single electronic medical record or health record, depending on which acronym you want to use. So now we take that picture of all those modalities and all those steps and say we have to communicate that up into an electronic health record. And that ties that there. Now we can start to tell the story about the data infrastructure that goes with that entire system. So we start looking at a web connection of all these data points across the capabilities that we have in the system. Then what we can do is take the next step and say, it's not just about Philips. We have the capability to connect all agnostically to any medical device across this entire system and get that information up into the electronic health record. That's the second big eye opener, right? So there's actually, it's maybe the third. The first one is we look at this as an entire system. That's the first big eye opener. It's one big system. If we're not separated VA, DOD, operational medicine, it's one big system, and we interact with that. The second one is that there's so many touch points along this whole system. That's the next aha. We light up all those little dots, and I go, wow, we're across this whole system. And then the third one is we're agnostic. We can step in and touch base on a GE system or a Hitachi or a Siemens system, pull that data and roll that into the electronic health record. So now we're touching the entire system, whether you're Philips or not, and pulling that up into that electronic health record. Further to that, not all care is provided within the military construct of VA medical facilities, medical treatment facilities. A fair amount of the care that's provided to military members and their families is purchased. And it's purchased through Tricare or the Community Care Network, Tricare being the Defense Benefit Program, and Community Care Network being the VA medical care program that supports purchase care. And these are for things that either the veteran or military member or family don't have access to where they live, but they're entitled to care. So those two systems, Tricare and CCN, are ways that access to care is provided. So in the continuum, we put those two layers on top. We say, all right, now we've got care being provided in the private sector by these two systems, and the handoff happens about the same time that a military member becomes a veteran. Families are taken care of in the Tricare piece. Community Care Network does not take care of families, it takes care of only the veteran. So it's a distinction that has to occur. So when you take that and say, all right, now I've got to capture that information and get that into the electronic health record. How do we do that? That's a problem we're still trying to solve. We're not there yet. But that's where we can start telling a story of this interconnected, multimodal, interoperable network of medical devices. And we figure out, okay, how do we get to that? And when it's a commercial payer, the hook we have is in that payment. So that payment gets made for a certain procedure or certain process. And if we grab that data, now we know the rest of the story of what's happening to military members and their families. So we can start to pull that in. We haven't figured out how to do that yet, but we know that that's the hook to get that information in. And then, across all of this continuum, we go up yet another layer and put in all the sponsors right on top of that. So it's DOD, Veteran Affairs, Department of Health, Tricare, Community Care Network, and all the contractors that support Tricare, TriWest, Humana, Community Care Network has multiple providers. They all get to play. And then that's what turns into this big mosaic map that we call the military health continuum. And that's where we are today. So we're in the process of taking that map, which we've done in Figma and PowerPoint right now. We have an interactive PowerPoint where I can move through and pick and choose what I want to show up. We have Figma that sort of rolls through it and builds it step by step, and that's sort of on a loop that we can play. And it's a loop that I can control the speed of, so I can talk ahead of it if I need to. And then the context for all of this is many places. And one is internally. I use it for an internal education piece, like I talked about before. It's like, this is the market in the market that Kim talks about, Kim Mingo talks about. It's one single health system that supports 9 million beneficiaries. It's the largest health system in the world. And this picture helps us tell that story. It's like, this is how big it is. This is our touch points. This is how long it lasts. These are all the interactions. So internally, it lets me establish with the other 69,770 Philips people and tell them this is what we're dealing with. This is our market within a market, and this is who we sell to. So internally, it's very valuable in that regard. It also acts as a catalyst for ideas. So we put this up in various ideation groups, and it's amazing to watch happen, because you throw this continuum up, and then all of a sudden people realize how many touch points they have across the way, and they start to think about, okay, well, if we did this here, then that happens there, and they start to get ideas about how we can impact this whole system versus just selling to that medical treatment facility or that one single fancy. They say, okay, now look, I've got, respiratory care as an example. We've got ventilators, imaging capability, AI, all kinds of stuff that we can say, all right, if we look at this whole continuum, we own respiratory care. Put them all together, it's like, okay, all of a sudden we're not just selling ventilators, we're in the respiratory care business. And you see that happen when you show this to the company. It's like they started having these ideas like, wow, we can cover a lot of ground with this, and it gets the creative juices flowing. So internally, I think it's starting to be a very valuable tool. Externally, Philips is not really seen as a government contractor. When you talk to somebody externally and say, who's Philips to you? And quite often you hear light bulbs. It's you're in the light bulb and TV business. It's like, well, no, we're not. Let me show you something. We're actually a healthcare company, and here's where we impact military health. Largest medical system in the world. We're a large footprint provider. Here's all the places we are. And then the lights come on. It's like, oh wow, yeah, you really are a healthcare company. And we're also not known for having a very large footprint or impact. So when we show our competitors or our potential partners, these are all the places we are along the military health continuum. Like, okay, you are relevant. We do need to partner with you. You can have influence in my success going forward if I'm a systems integrator and I want to see how all this works and where Philips can be of influence or value. And then we layer in the fact that we're agnostic, that we're not just pointing at Philips products. That if I'm talking to Siemens, I can say, look, this is where we are. This is where you are. We can connect together and get the data up. We can both be mutually successful. And this tool helps me tell that story as well. So internal use, external use, and it's valuable for my team. In my own team, our internal government people, it's kind of a refresher to say, okay, this is the system we're involved in. And if you're not in direct sales and facing the customer on a daily basis, and you're in contracting or finance or whatever, this tool allows us to connect the support staff to the mission, right? It says this is the higher cause. This is the higher calling that we're working for, and our CEO loves it. He's like, yeah, this is what I get to do. I get to influence this great organization from the time a military member swears in to the time they get put in Arlington on behalf of a grateful nation. We get to do this every day. And he uses it as a launching point. And that's where the energy I think that you're currently feeling from Kim and me, and we're passing it down from the leadership because they're excited about this. They want to use it as a tool. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
So it's a really great story. It's a super compelling story. Let me ask some questions that may be a little master the obvious, but I want clarity on them. First of all, the EMR, is there an EMR? Are they using Cerner or Epic, or what are they? Is there one?
Yeah, there is one. It's Cerner. It's Cerner, Oracle Cerner. We call them Cernical. But it's the Oracle Cerner product. DoD calls it Genesis. So when you talk to DoD, they'll say Genesis. That's really the Oracle Cerner product. And then the VA is the implementation of the Cerner product, and they just call it Cerner, is competing with Epic. So there's a large effort to deploy into VA, but there's a lot of love still for Epic, and Epic does a lot more than just EMR. They manage a lot of different things through Epic. So there's now the thought is that they're going to keep some of Epic and they're going to put Cerner in place and keep some of that. So that's kind of where we're at.
So in the most simple terms, we are the pipe that's collecting data from a Siemens MRI, a Philips ultrasound, a bat doc in the field, and we're getting it to the EMR.
Yeah.
And the EMR is the touch point that really travels with the individual, whether it's the service member or their family. The EMR is really traveling with them, but we're the connection.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And the thing that we're overcoming, and that's an important point, is I'll tell this story, is back when I was a Navy corpsman and you were in field medicine and somebody got injured, you were taking care of a point of care. I communicated the condition of that patient through a number of means. One, I could write on their body with some dirt, say they got a tourniquet, or I did CPR, or I gave morphine. And sometimes I got a little manila colored paper tag with a wax pencil. I could write on it. And then when that individual got transferred to a helicopter or any transport device, I would hope that stuff stayed with them. They would bleed on it, dirt's flying everywhere. Chances are when they got to the next level of care, that provider had no idea what was going on with that patient. So advance a little bit further and the Sharpie gets invented, right? So now you can write on the body with what you've done to the patient with a Sharpie. And that's more indelible, but it still gets buried in dirt, blood, whatever. If you use alcohol on a patient, the Sharpie goes away. So better, not great. Next thing up comes Bat Doc, right? So now I've got a tool that I can carry with me. It's on a phone-sized device. I still have to hand jam the information in a lot of cases, but there are some cases where I can interact with a wearable or a medical device that I've brought with me that I can put on the patient, and it sucks that information in. Now, when the next level of transport comes in, I can airdrop that information from point A to point B and get the complete as complete as can be history on the patient that's resilient, doesn't go away. You got it there. No matter what happens to the patient, you've got that information. And then what happens from there in terms of the EMR is I can take the information out of Bat Doc and send an image of a form into the EMR. It's not live data. It's just a PDF image that can go into what happened to that patient. And then the acuity of information around that patient starts to increase as they go up level of care in terms of active interaction with the EMR.
You can see the future. I mean, it just paints the future for anybody that's listening to this stuff. And I mean, the AI implications are huge.
Yeah.
Video. So, I mean, if you're the corpsman with the camera and it sees what's going on. It can listen to your voice. It can interpret all that, put it into the bat dock, send it from the bat dock to a satellite actually, and
Oh.
it's instantly in the hands of the people that need it.
Yep. Clearly, you've talked to Chris and Dr. Rose.
Yeah,
I resemble that comment.
Yeah, that's why we hired him.
Where does it break?
Where's it broken?
Yeah.
Can I take a swipe at that, Gil?
Yeah, go ahead.
So where it's broken is, I'll be quite frankly, it's on the customer side. You've got so many layers of bureaucracy. You've got so many layers of innovation. For example, you've got people working, you've got 3, 4, 5 separate entities working on AI, and none of them talk to each other.
Yeah.
You've got different, how can I say this? You've got the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines that's still responsible for readiness. So they have their own buckets of money. Then you've got DHA that has buckets of money, and they're both working on the same or similar types of projects. So where it's broken is where when we get in there and we start talking to people. One of the things that I hear most commonly, well, that's not my role, that's their role. Okay, so go talk to those guys. And then you go talk to the other guys and they say, well, that's not my role, that's his role, that the guy you just talked to. So it's about vision. It's about taking ownership and responsibility. And sometimes, and oftentimes, you just don't have that. You've got, especially in the time of Doge right now, where everybody's being micromanaged and very scrutinized on every dollar they spend. Unless you can show in front to the customer, and that's one reason this video is very important, in my opinion. Unless you can show where all the dots align and the cost ultimately is lower with higher quality care, it's really hard to start that conversation. That's just my 2 cents from a sales perspective and having these conversations with these senior leaders. That's where my headspace is at right now. That's where it's broken.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Chris. And to add to that, and I went through this with medical training. I happened to be at headquarters Navy Medicine, was my last active duty job, and I was the resource director for education, training, and personnel. And at that point in time, DoD wanted to get rid of some of the redundancy that Chris alludes to, that all the services are doing the same thing separately. And so the goal was that we would take all that commonality, squish it into one training program, and then move forward from there, because there's a lab tech's a lab tech, an x-ray tech's an x-ray tech. Doesn't matter if you're wearing Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, doesn't matter. But what happens, and this is where we get into the situation Chris talked about, is there is some service uniqueness to each one. Like if you're a lab tech, you got to be able to do lab on a ship. You got to be able to do it in garrison, in a medical facility, or you got to be able to do it in a forward medical facility. Depending on what service you're in, those are entirely different environments and different pieces of equipment. So there's a service unique argument that happens that's 10% of the problem. 90% of it's in common, but that 10% is what gets all the attention. It's like, I can't do that because I'm service unique. I can't use this piece of AI because the bad doc doesn't go underwater. It's like, so I can't use it. I don't want it. Well, okay, fine. What do you want? I want submersible stuff. You look at SOCOM, whole different problem. It's like, yeah, we all treat people the same way, but now I can't have anything that lights up. It's got to be subdued and dark. So these service mission unique things come into play, and they become distractions. And to Chris's point, it's like they all start pointing at each other. It's like, well, if you got a communications problem, that's not me. You got to talk to the communicators. But the communicator's like, well, you're not giving me the right stuff. I can't communicate with that. So you got to do something different. And we end up in this circle. And when you talk about AI, there's so much of it. I mean, we just came back from MHSRS, and the parade of people coming up to us with flyers to say, here's my new AI. Do you want to play with it? And they don't have any money, but they've got a really cool product. You can't say yes to everybody, but it's there, and we have to manage it in this continuum somehow. We have a product called AI Manager, which is supposed to be a clearinghouse for AI tools that are medically, clinically relevant, that ultimately, as we adopt these things, we'll run them through AI Manager so that you have one entry point to grab your AI. But Chris is spot on with all of that, and that's partly what's broken.
So let me chime in for just a second.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand some of these nuances that I think will be really important for how we create this piece. We are not the data stream, and I don't know if that's the right word, say between the bat dock and the helicopter, or the bat dock and a satellite, or anything like that. We're more, tell me if this is right. Are we an API that sits on a server somewhere that's just interpreting this stuff? Or are we part of that communication stream? That's the only word I can think of it.
Yeah.
That is encrypted and doing all the things that it needs to do. Where do we sit?
The answer is yes, and one of the reasons Chris was so attracted to us is he comes from the comms industry, and that's his specialty, and he just happened to get into healthcare. So, Chris, please answer that.
So we're all the above. So we can provide the highway, we can provide your stop signs, we can provide your traffic lights. We can make all of that connectivity happen. So we're all the above. So we have an HIE solution that could connect all the dots from a data transport perspective. And then we have the applications that are built in an agnostic platform that can receive standardized data sets, HL7, API, FHIR, those types of real common data, standardized data exchange interfaces. That really makes us the intuitive choice when it comes to interoperability.
Okay, so that's interesting. So if we make a visual that does show that we are the highway, that's not incorrect.
No. Like that drawing, I think you took a screenshot of it that I displayed at one point. We can provide all of that interconnectivity. So if all of those wires go into DISA, we can provide all of that connectivity.
And then we also sit on the server side with, I guess I'd just call it the AI and the API that's going to interpolate all the data that comes out of all the different machines. It makes the handshake between the EMR. Why isn't anybody else doing this? Why can't the system integrators do this?
Well, that's exactly where it's going to go next. Is we need the integrators to do this. But the difference is when you're an integrator and you hire a doctor, you're not in the healthcare business. We're in the healthcare business. So when you manage large data, when you think back a couple of years, everybody's saying big data, right? Healthcare data is different from big data. You have to preserve every pixel, every component of healthcare data, or it becomes clinically irrelevant. So when you compress health data, you lose quality. And when you regurgitate health data out of the system, it's got to come out 100%. You can't lose it. The other important thing is latency. The time between capturing the data and the time somebody sees the data is critical when you're making decisions on an intensive care patient or a critically injured individual. That half a second delay makes a difference. And when you're moving data, you have to do it in a way that there's an acceptable level of latency. And the integrators don't necessarily appreciate that. So they need us. And that's our play in the world is that clinically relevant piece. Because we put clinicians first before we put infrastructure. And
Okay.
When you
So
look
that's
at the EM, and when you look at the EMR, that's an administrative system. It's not a clinical system. It captures, manages, and regurgitates data. That's it. It's not, you won't find Cerner being FDA cleared, right? They're an administrative system. Our stuff is all FDA cleared, and the system that we run on is FDA cleared because we're obliged to maintain clinical quality and patient safety. Systems integrators are not obliged to do that. We are. That's a key distinction in the market. But we need them. They're the ones that develop the backbone, the transmission capabilities, the data storage, the data management. All of that is that we don't hold. We're not an Amazon. We're not Oracle with old big databases. It's
Well,
not
I mean,
us.
I would just one caveat, Gil. So
Yeah.
when it comes to data, so yeah, you're spot on. These large systems integrators, they can put network infrastructures. They've been doing it for years. Like over Mission Command, they've been responsible for integrating all of those mission muscle movements into a what they call a common operating picture. They've been doing it for the last 20 years. Um, you know, Ultimately, when it comes to the data, especially in the world of AI, the data has to be clean. And what I mean by that is it has to be standardized and normalized so AI can be effective. And so we are making great strides as Philips to ensure as the data is making it to the data lake that the integrator might stand up, that the data enters the data lake in such a way where AI is relevant. There's nothing worse than applying an AI overlay on data that's unclean because it's not going to be effective. It's not going to go. It's not going to know where to go look for the data. So we Philips, to kind of foot stomp what Gil was saying, we understand the relevance of the data and what it's supposed to look like. We maintain that level of proficiency in the national certifications to ensure that that data quality is there. In fact, we have whole solutions designed to push that data in a normalized, standardized way, so that data can be effective. So yes, the system integration piece of this, technically, could Philips do it? Probably. Does Philips want to do it? No, we don't want to maintain the staff that it takes to sit down with the customer and build that back-end infrastructure. So that's why we use systems integrators primarily. Because ultimately, we want to define our role. Our role is the data experts. Our role is the clinical experts. We'll make sure the data gets to you in a way that you can ingest it, receive it, and understand it, and ultimately apply AI models to it. That's why they need us.
Where's our success stories in this when somebody said, I get it, and they bought it?
Oh, I think those, when it comes to the government, we're still struggling with the success stories. I mean, we have pockets of success, like in patient monitoring and those types of things. But a lot of our EI solutions, where really our software backbones, if you will, are
Sorry,
relatively
what's EI? I missed that one.
enterprise informatics.
Okay.
That's
Yep.
where all of these AI data movement solutions reside within that business unit. They're relatively new, not necessarily new to the market, but new to the government. So we've got some like ETCC is enterprise deployed in the VA. That's the telecritical care solution. And now we're getting ready to deploy to the whole of DoD. So we're gaining momentum in that space, but we're just not quite there yet.
Got it. Okay, so I see a lot of legacy challenges that we're up against. Bureaucracy, groups not talking to other groups. What else? What do you hear when you get somebody looking at you like, yeah, I'm not buying it, or so? What are their big questions? Where do they see the problems or the questions? Are they reflecting their own internal problems with bureaucracy and whatnot, or do they see something in our story that isn't holding water?
Are you talking about from a customer's perspective or an internal stakeholder perspective?
Customer primarily, but if there's an internal stakeholder, I'd be interested in that too.
I
Well,
think customer
go ahead.
wise, I think we have a high level of confidence. You know, the reviews are, and this is speaking from a clinical standpoint. So love our products, like what we're doing, see the value in the AI. Our technical people are well accepted. But we are not what we say internally government ready. Right. So the government has a certain standard that they want to meet from a data management, security level, digital security, those kind of things. And this is blue ocean for us, right? We've done boxes, we sell devices. We make sure those devices are capable to operate on a military or VA network, and that has been the extent to which we operate. So when we start saying we're going to use cloud, we're going to move information over a certain network, there are security standards that apply to that, which we are working really hard to try to catch up to, and we're a little behind. So the customer critique on us, other than business operation, let's stick to the product. The customer critique on us is that we're not government ready, and we need to be. So when you talk to a key buyer at Defense Health Agency, he'll point and say, your equipment needs to be at a certain level of Windows maturity to be relevant on my networks. And in some cases, we're not there.
When are we going to be there?
Well, that's as we evolve our products, then we get there. So it's a product evolution. And then internally, we have to work. This is where Kim's challenge is, my challenge, and all my team, is getting the company to a point where that's an active part of the development process. It's being government ready, because we're still very commercially oriented, and that process of being government ready comes after the fact, not during the fact. So we're working on getting it during the fact, so that when we come out and we say, here's your product, it's government ready. Not here's your product, now give me 6 months. I'll wait for you to give me authority to operate. And then, by the way, if you wanted to go to cloud, I need you to help me with that. So we're behind, and our customers are, I wouldn't say they're criticizing that for us. They're starting to let us know what their expectation is. And we're hustling to try to get there.
So there's government ready on the product side. So our ultrasounds, our MRI.
We can operate. What we can't do in the context of future mandates, right now we're okay. In the context of future mandates, we need to catch up. And we're getting the warning signs from the customers to say, you better be there, or we're not going to be able to let you operate. Is that fair, Chris?
Oh yeah, that's definitely fair. I'll just give you an example, just real quick. So there's a new regulation that's coming out. It's called CUI, protection of CUI. It's been ongoing now under legislation, and going in and out of the House and getting revised now for over almost 6 years, 7 years. So through all of this, it hasn't really changed a lot. But Philips really hasn't been a proactive. They've been kind of waiting to see, where the cards fall, so to speak. Well, now, 1 October, this legislation is going to kick in some new regulations under the FAR. They're going to give you approximately a year to actually get certified by what they call a 3PAO. It's a third party auditor. Or they're going to pull your license to operate with the government. Now, every agency has to come up with their own sub policies to the CUI mandate. Our two primary ones, DoD and VA. DoD has been the front runner, and they've already got a policy established and published and so forth and so on. And then head over to the VA, and you've got the head of cybersecurity for VA and the undersecretary pointing to him saying, and he stands up in open forums and say, we're going to adopt the DoD policy. So that's there. I mean, they're kind of telling you that what they're going to do ahead of time, right? And but yet, with all of these things, knowing that some of these things are coming, we're just now having those conversations on what does it actually mean? How do we actually get compliant? And it's not going to be an easy process for a global company. I mean, and just to kind of give you a couple of highlights, like non-US citizens can't operate on our as infrastructure engineers and or on DoD or VA contracts. They have to be US citizens. The number two thing is that if you're a data mover, and there's data resident in your systems that belongs to the DoD or to the United States government, it has to be resident. The data has to stay inside the United States. It can't go outside the United States. And because we are a global company, some of our solutions move data maybe to Ireland or through India, and they can't do that. So now they're having to, going back to Gil's point, they have to mature those solutions to the point to where they can, it doesn't matter. They can be resident, the data can be resident in the United States. And similarly, you're starting to see those same type of requirements, say for the EU and for China and for Dubai or down in the the Middle East. Those same type of data residency requirements are required in those organizations as well. So from a global perspective, it's cheaper to operate if you have one standard solution or one standard way of doing business. What they've got to do now is kind of break it more granularly and do it. It's a standardized process, but it can also be stood up in North America. It could be stood up in Europe. It could be stood up in China, to where you have those isolations of people that are working on their specific products and not a global landscape from a HR perspective.
So to your question, if a customer were to call shenanigans on us, right, and say, okay, you guys are blowing smoke. If we were to say that we're capable of meeting all the government requirements to move data and store data, first question they say, well, are you FedRAMP cleared? And we have to say no, because we're not. So that's the risk point right now in the big story. That's the risk point. It's like we can't do that yet.
To respect our time, let me put both of you on the spot for just a second.
Sure.
You're in Washington, D.C., and you've got the elevator ride with Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
And he wants to know, he says, oh yeah, you work for Philips. What are you doing here? What are you going to tell him? What's your pitch? What's our elevator pitch to Pete or any of those high level people in DoD?
I would go clinical first. I'd say, we're the company that, just like I said at the beginning of our talk, said we're the company that if you walk into a VA facility, there's a high likelihood that one of our products is going to touch you and treat you. And that product's been established we've been established for over 130 years, and the patient safety and quality data around that, or patient safety and quality around those tools, make sure that your soldier, sailors, and airmen are getting the highest quality care they can possibly get.
I would probably take a slightly different approach. Knowing the back end of Philips and the way they operate, they're money driven, right? So I would probably say, sir, I'm here to create a partnership with you. You know, I see you guys announcing you're doing partnerships with Oracle and all of these other companies. I'm here to tell you that we're the subject matter experts in healthcare. They might be able to move your data, but we create the data. And if you're going to be able to rely on the data, that's Philips. Going back off what Gil just said, we have the experience, we have the know-how, and we already strategically are positioned inside of your facilities. With a partnership, we can dedicate more resources, clean up our supply chain, and provide you even higher quality of support moving forward. That would be my elevator pitch for Pete, or any of those decision makers up there in the cabinet space, for even over on the Collins side. You know, depending on the audience, that would, in general, that would be the tone of the discussion from my perspective.
Yeah.
I want a partnership. I think if you take a partnership level opportunity to Roy, and to the business unit leaders throughout the chain of Philips, that's going to resonate with them to, hey, we need to get our stuff on board. And if we want to start having this revenue, start moving it at higher echelons. When I first figured out how much money, Kim has for her AOP, I was thinking back at some of my contract days while short in the DoD health space. I was dealing with some fairly significant projects. And I mean, my first thought was it should be 3 times as much. From an R&D, from a, actual execution, a mission execution, I kind of got to see some of those higher numbers and what DHA was actually spending on a yearly basis, on what the Army was actually spending on a yearly basis in R&D and acquisitions. And I'm like, holy smoke, we got some catching up to do. And now that I've been here for a year, VA is our strongest foothold. Absolutely. I think Gil would agree with me on that. But
Yeah.
DoD has got a lot of room for growth. So
I
I
absolutely
think
love both your stories. These fit together very nicely too. Let me ask
That's why we
one.
travel together.
Yeah, that I can imagine. How important though is the Philips co-create kind of thinking to this entire equation? So the ability that we do sit and work with people.
Yeah.
Is it important?
It is important. It's one of the things that's unique to us. And it goes back to that partnership that Chris mentioned. And it's one of the reasons I'm here, actually, because of that co-create process. I had a consulting relationship with Philips before I joined. So I got to kind of try before I buy. And the co-create piece was something that really attracted me because it creates that partnership and it reverse engineers the goal. So for instance, we sat down with SOCOM early in the time I was here, and it was very convoluted. A lot of ideas flowing around, and we weren't really sure what they wanted. So we put them all in a room, went through the co-create process, and said, we started off with, at the end of the day, you've got a special operator that has an injured brother that they need to take care of and either extract or get well enough to move. That's the end game. So what do you need to be able to support that? And we walked it back from there, and we ended up with a wall full of information, and it was all just free thinking, this ideation process, and it boiled down to, at the end of the day, I was able to look at my SOCOM partner and say, out of all this, what's important to you? What can I give you today that's going to help you solve that problem we came here today to solve? And he pointed to one thing. He says, I want BATDOC integration with Tempest Pro. That's what I want. That all this thing, the most important thing he had was to take the information out of that field medical unit, put it in a portable device, and be able to carry that information seamlessly from point A to point B. That was it. So it's that, and it's that partnership in the co-create process that says, it establishes that foothold that we have a common goal. And we're not trying to sell you anything. You told me what you need. And I didn't open the discussion with, here's your problem and I'm here to fix it. right? That's a sales start. You know, when I was in the deputy assistant secretary, chair at agriculture, and a parade of people came through. Here, you got 60,000 windows in your complex. They're all old. I make windows. Here's what's going to solve your problem. Like, guess what? I'm not worried about windows today. You're wasting my time, right? You came in and told me what you think my problem is. That's not my problem, but that's direct sales. We don't do that. The co-create process takes us out of that. And it takes us into this relationship sales, relationship-based problem solving that leads us to sales. And that's the way I've always sold across my entire career. And that's the way my team, as the solution engineers that don't sell boxes, we sell solutions. That's our cream. That's how we get to the customer and figure out what kind of solution are we going to develop. And it's so valuable to where we want to go and what we want to do. And it's valuable to us internally to move the company away from selling boxes into selling solutions.
Enos, Deb, any last questions?
Not for me. It's just been really enlightening. Thank you.
Yes, same here. It was very interesting to hear both of your viewpoints. So,
Thanks. Drink from the fire hydrant.
Tim? Oh, I love it. It is so exciting, and we're just getting into that point where we get to start thinking about how we give it shape. I guess I have a last question / request.
Sure.
Do you have any other PowerPoints or anything that you have written down that you could share with us that just shows some of what you would use when you're giving this a pitch, when you're in front of somebody?
I don't know what you have, so I can't answer that question. The
I don't.
PowerPoint.
Yeah, I don't really have anything specifically from this. Only things that we have created with Tim and Mark
Okay.
and all over the years.
All right.
So I'm curious if there's something novel.
It wouldn't be novel, it'd be pre-generation to what you may have already seen, but it's useful. The click-through PowerPoint was one of our first goes, but it's still very, very useful to me because I can pick and shoot where I want to pay attention to. The Figma is on a reel. So the only thing I can do with that is really speed it up and slow it down or start it in a specific place. So that's a little challenging. Those are really the two products we have. And there are several iterations from when we first started and had a VA and a DoD to what we have today, which is the completely integrated continuum.
If you can send that PowerPoint, that would be super
Yeah.
handy.
Gil,
Okay.
I have a question for you, Gil. That video that I included in my slide deck, I don't know if you included that in your slide deck. But the one where it walks through the roles of care, the battle spill, it walks through the continuum. I mean, really, from the Army's perspective, do you think that might be relevant and kind of give them some insight?
Yeah.
I mean, because ultimately, and this is a video that the Army put together, I don't know, some time ago. But it really talks about the continuum, and what they're responsible for, what the DHA is now responsible for. And ultimately, at each one of those roles, there you will find Philips equipment at every single juncture, whether it be the point of care. Now, we don't have a lot at the point of care, but we do have stuff at the point of care, point of need, whatever you want to call it, where the soldiers are getting blown up, right? We have stuff there. We have stuff in the roles, what they call roles 1 through 3. So 1 being the front line, people getting shot at. Role 2 is more of your battalion aid station type of care. And then you move up to the role 3s, field hospitals. Role 4 is your brick and mortar facilities back in safe places, or safer places, I should say. But it really breaks it down. And ultimately, if we're putting a video together, what I kind of envision is actually, the same kind of concept, but really call out. You'll be using Tempest Pro and point of care ultrasound and your, rolls 1 and 2, and then go on from there. And roll 3, this is what you'll find. And then put a ribbon on it. And this is how we tie it all together to make sure it gets back to your EHR. I can send you that link if you would like.
Please.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Guys, thank you very much. Again, every time I talk to you, I learn a lot more. So this is fantastic. I'm really glad we have this recorded so that we can go back and really mine it.
we can
Have a
get that, right?
fantastic weekend. What's that?
We can get the recording, right?
Yeah, I'll make sure it gets it'll probably be huge, so I'll get it into a
Yeah.
SharePoint or something through Tim to get back to you.
Okay, great. Yeah,
Fantastic, guys.
I may want to carve a few pieces out of it for my own use, so.
Yeah, and when we go through it, we'll analyze it and basically turn it into an outline of all the pieces and parts that we heard. So we should be able to get those blocks, if you will, the big
Great.
ideas.
Great. Okay. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.